What's up, guys? Today we're going to walk through the installation of our CTA Brute bumper. It's the rear bumper for the 2017 to current F-250, F-350, and today we're going to put it on our 2022 F-250 trimmer shop truck. When you open the box, you'll get, of course, the bumper, the brackets, the hardware kit, and you'll also get some parking sensor deletes, which we'll go over in a minute. Most of these newer trucks have parking sensors, which you'll reuse, but if you don't, we give you these deletes to make it look like you do, and it'll fill these holes. Let's go over a few features this bumper offers. First, it's made out of all 3/16 or 7 gauge steel, except for the mounts, which are 1/4 inch. You have these 1 inch thick recovery points that are actually plug welded through from the inside and the outside. You get to retain your factory trailer wiring plug, spot for your license plate. We include the LED license plate lights that we'll bolt in a minute. You keep your factory spare tire lock. If you have parking sensors, you'll get to reuse those along with the housings from the original bumper. And if you don't have parking sensors, we include these neat little machined parking sensor deletes that'll fill the void and look really clean. These are pre-cut for LED backup lights. They fit the rigid as well as these pathfinders, which is what we're going to put in today. That's an optional add-on. And then one of my favorite features is over here in the corner. You've got this really robust step with a lot of grip. So even if you have a big muddy boot, there's still plenty of room to get a good toe hold. Also, of course, we include grade 8 mounting hardware, and you'll use a little bit of the factory hardware as well. So let's get started. All right, we're gonna get ready to take this bumper off. The first thing we're gonna remove are these little accessories here, your spare tire lock. Just set that aside and put it back in the bumper in a minute, in the new bumper. This has some tabs on the back side that you can squeeze to pop the whole thing out. That makes it easier to find this clip to release the plug. We'll just let that go back in there. You've got a couple 13mm head bolts here. We don't reuse those. Now we're going to go around to the frame. We need to take out these 4 bolts, and we're going to reuse those. These are kind of in the way, so I'm going to start by taking those off. I'm using a 13/16 because my metric set doesn't go up that big, but I think really it's a metric bolt and nut, and I can't remember what size that is. We'll do the same thing on the other side. With those 4 nuts removed, the bumper is actually free to come off. We've got one more wiring harness, and you can see it a little better once you get the bumper loosened up. So that's the plug right there, and it's got a little tab. Now we'll set the bumper off and out of the way. With the bumper out of the way, those first 4 nuts that I pointed to originally, now we can take those off and get this bracket out of the way. This is the hardware that we want to reuse. While we're here, we'll go ahead and put these new brackets on in place of the old ones we just took off. It's the same hardware we just took out. When I tighten these down, I'm going to roughly center it through its travel. This mounting setup has the 3 planes of adjustment that we like to offer in a bumper. You've got the left and right with these slots. The slots on the mounts that made up to this piece are vertical, and that's your up and down adjustment, and your fore and aft adjustment is in these mounts. So I'm going to set it roughly in the center, tighten it down, then once the bumper is installed, if we need to rotate it a little bit or slide it forward or rearward, we can loosen these bolts and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down in the middle. With the mounts on and tightened down, this is a good time to switch the accessories and the sensors from the original bumper to this bumper. So we'll go ahead and do that. That'll include the spare tire lock, that'll include the trailer wiring plug, the sensors and the wiring harness for the sensors, and then we'll put in the LED license plate lights and also our Pathfinder backup lights. It was nearly impossible to actually film this harness inside the bumper, but it was laid in there just like this. So you just have to kind of work your way in to each sensor And there are two little tabs on each side in the sensor housing. You gently pry them apart and the sensor comes out. And that'll become more clear in a minute when I take one of those housings out of the bumper. But you've got 4 sensors to do that too. And the LED license plate lights, just twist them out of their housing and they'll pop out. Once you have all that loose, you have these little Christmas trees that you have to pop out of their little holding spot in the bumper. Once it's loose, I just fished it all this way and pulled it out right here. Now I'm going to flip the bumper over and start removing the sensor housings. If you look right in here from the top down, you can see a little tab. And I'm moving with my finger. There are several of those around the sensor housing. In order to get the housing out, you'll have to pry those tabs inward and also simultaneously pull the sensor housing out. There may just be top and bottom on these. Yeah, just one on the top and bottom. So a minute ago when I said to remove the sensor from the housing, it was snapped in there like this. So you have to gently pry apart on these tabs, one on each side, and then pop the sensor out. So most importantly with these sensor housings, make sure you remember which one came from which hole. Don't just throw them in a pile. I like to leave them in line with where they came out because that's the way they need to go back in the new bumper. So I'm going to do that same thing on these remaining 3 housings. All right, that's everything that needs to come out of the stock bumper. So we've got them lined up here. Before I put the sensor housings in, I wanted to show you these sensor deletes. So they're made to look just like a sensor housing with a sensor in it. There's a little machined ring. This just pops in the hole, and then from the back side you'll use this fender washer, lock washer, nut to tighten it down. There's a little machined 6-sided hex there, so you can stick an Allen key in there to hold it while you tighten down the nut. Anyway, that doesn't apply to us because we have the sensors. So we're going to snap these into place, and if you do happen to get them mixed up, you can kind of go through process of elimination. These notches in the thin sheet metal welded to the back of the bumper, they align with these tabs on the housing, so you really can't put them in wrong, I think. So each one of those will snap in. I'm going to go through and do those. I'm going to bolt in our Pathfinder LED lights. I'm going to bolt in our LED license plate lights, and I'm actually going to wait on the trailer wiring plug. I feel like it's easier once the bumper's on to pull the harness through, connect the harness, and then snap this in. Now, the only other thing we have is this spare tire lock. You'll notice one side is flat, the other has a little ridge. There's a little notch to line up with the ridge. So it goes in just like it did in your factory bumper. And that's it. Okay, the harness that we took out of the bumper a few minutes ago, we're ready to put back in. So it's just going to lay across the inside top here, and in these big mounting ribs there's some holes in the top corners, and that hole is for a wiring harness to pass through. Now the sensor itself is a little too big, so I'm going to pop the sensor out of the harness and just feed the harness through. And then I'll reconnect the sensor. And then it will snap into the OEM sensor housing. You may want to hold the sensor housing from the front to keep it from popping out as you push in on the actual sensor. We're going to do the same thing for the other 3. Now for the license plate lights, there is one spot where you have to cut and splice wires, and that's right here. So I'm going to peel back the loom, cut this little light off, and then I'm going to cut these ends off and splice the wires together. I'll do that in just a minute. Okay, we've got the harness in place. Whenever we get the bumper on the truck, we'll find a place on the hitch or frame to zip tie it in place so it can't fall. But the last thing we have to do is connect the license plate lights. So we're going to cut off these little bullet ends that come on the lights. We don't need those. We'll strip those wires. We're going to cut the factory license plate light off, set it aside, and then we're going to connect on this truck. I'm not saying it's the same for all years, but this is a 2022 that has a blue with a gray, or maybe a white, it's hard to say, a blue with a gray tracer, I'm going to say, and a blue with a pinkish red tracer. this pinkish red tracer is the one that carries the positive current, and the light, the black wire, is the positive wire. So we're going to connect the blue with the pink tracer to the black wire, blue with the white tracer to the white wire, or gray tracer. Actually, let's call it white. That way I can say white tracer to white wire. So there you go. We're going to do that right now. All right. Let's put it on the truck. All right, we're ready to hang the bumper on the mounts now. I want to make a quick note about this mounting pad. It's got all these holes in it. The reason is we share this particular part with several of our rear bumpers. So that allows us to work with different layouts that we have to do on the mounts. So we've got these 3 holes. That's going to line up with these 3 holes here. Just a note. It'll only go through one way when you put it on the truck. So at this point, grab a buddy. You can actually hang it on the mounts and it won't fall. It'll kind of balance there by itself as you get situated. But do go ahead and lay your hardware out. These being 1/2 inch bolts, you'll need 3/4 inch tools. So we're on the driver's side looking up. It's really hard to show the bolts going in because my hands are in the way in the video, but you can see these 3 bolts. You can kind of reach up through the hitch to put the bolt in, and then from the bottom to get the nut started. And I like to use 2 ratcheting wrenches, one on the bolt side and one on the nut side. Of course, you just want to get them kind of snug and then step back and make sure you like the way the bumper's adjusted. If it needs to go left, right, up, down, whichever the case may be. So I get one kind of snug, check it. If it's good, I tighten it down a little bit more, maybe on the other side, do a little back and forth, because it'll shift a little as you go through the process. But once you get it where you want it, tighten the rest of the way down. We have the bumper adjusted where we want. We've got it tightened down. Make sure definitely to double check your left and right adjustment as well as your up and down as it pertains to the tailgate. In just a minute I'll drop the tailgate and make sure that it's centered, that it's not touching either side, and that when I bring it all the way down that it doesn't touch the top of the bumper. The only thing I need to do is reconnect the sensor harness that's in here to the truck's harness, zip tie it up, and then reconnect this trailer wiring plug. So it's connected, and then it's going to snap in just like with the OEM bumper. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do the tailgate test now. There we go. Looks great. Plenty of room. It's nice and centered. No problem there. The only thing we have left to do is connect our LED backup lights. We're not going to do that right now, but I want to let you know you have a couple different options that people usually choose. You can run a separate switch up to your dash if you want to turn them on whenever you want, like for a work light, or if you just want them to come on when you put them in reverse, you can tap them into your OEM reverse harness. Anyway, that wraps it up. If you're looking for more details, please check out our website, chandlertruckaccessories.com.